You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking at some buy low players who over the last couple of weeks their numbers have been lagging a little bit, and the person that has them on their fantasy team might be a little bit frustrated, so you might be able to pry them away at a cheaper price tag. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. And the first name on this list, if you're watching the video, you can see the name. You're going, Josh, what are you talking about? Why is Ja Morant a buy low player? And I'll tell you why. It's because over the last 2 weeks, he's the 203rd ranked player. He's playing just 26 minutes a night, 17 points with 6 assists, 41% from the field. He has not blocked one single shot. He's had 2 steals over that time, which is really deflating his value. He's hitting under a 3 a game and under 3 rebounds. So while he might have the spectacular numbers, he has the game-winning shots. He'll have the occasional big game. Overall, his play hasn't been that good. 33% usage is strong. Under 50% true shooting is the opposite of strong. He's not hitting free throws, and that ranking doesn't bode well in terms of his current performance. Now, I don't think that he's anywhere near a drop or anything along those lines, but you have to look at who has him in your league and just see if you can get him for your worst and second worst player or your 10th and 11th best player. He'll be better than this. I think he'll be a top 50 player, from January to February onwards. The steals, I think, will come up. I think we'll get more scoring and the minutes will start to be increased, the 3-point volume. But that, with the 17 points, it always looks good on the surface. 6.5 assists looks good, and there's nothing else around it. And that is, all those things factor into fantasy contributions and fantasy ranks. And over those last 6 games, Morant's numbers have been down. That's inarguable. Whether the manager that has him on their team thinks that, or is worried, or is panicking, and as I consistently stress, and I want you guys not to be like this, is that people overreact to recency, to one game. Oh, one game, that was shit, get rid of him. Like getting rid of that mentality when thinking 6 games is less than 10% of the season. We've got a lot of the time to go, and a lot of things that can change here in these numbers. And I think a lot of these things will change here with Morant hitting just 42% of his twos over that time. That makes him an interesting buy low option. The next guy I've got to talk about is DeJounte Murray. Now, Murray has not been great over these last couple of games. Over his last 7, he's the 184th ranked player. He's scoring just 8 points per game and playing only 22 minutes a night. I had my concerns about him at the start of the year when he was shooting like 58% from the field. Well, that's not going to stick. Well, it hasn't. He's down at under 42% from the field. Only 0.6 steals, 0.1 blocks. The rebounds are still good. The assists are still pretty strong, but it's those minutes that are concerning and the lack of defensive numbers that have dropped him way outside that top 150. People are getting frustrated with the minutes, with the way the Spurs are playing, with his lack of production as well after that hot start. Again, like Morant, he's not a drop, but when public opinion and fantasy public opinion changes and switches on a player, that's your time to pounce. If you were looking to get Murray earlier in the season, you would have had to give up a top 50 player. Now you don't. Maybe you don't even have to give up a top 100 guy. And I do think he'll be better than this, and he'll be back inside the top 100 in no time. And those steals will obviously come back up. He's only had 5 steals over the last 7 games. Nowhere near enough to maintain the value that we expect from Murray. And steals and blocks, they're the 2 categories that have such huge influences. When they vary, the rankings can change 20, 30 spots in short-term type numbers. So Murray's numbers are heavily influenced by those lack of steals during that time frame. This guy continually is on this list, and I'll keep saying it because I think he's going to be better. Mike Conley, the 160th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. The minutes are fine, 33 a night, 17.5 points is okay. The assists at 4.3, maybe they get better, but not significantly. He's never going to be an 8-assist guy, but he never was an 8-assist guy, even back in Memphis. What we're expecting to happen is the 70% he's hitting from the free throw line, that will change. The 40% he's hitting from the field, that will change. They are 2 big numbers that he can get back to 80, 82 from the line, 45, 46 from the field. These are all very, very easily within the range of the abilities of Mike Conley. those things come back, and then you go from 160 if you go back into the top 80, like pretty easily. So while it's been a prolonged frustration for Conley so far this season, there's no doubt about that. Anyone who's stuck fat with him through this time will be getting frustrated that it's not coming around. But I buy that Conley is not a horrible shooter. Like true shooting of, 52% over these last 6 games is not an indication, or even over the course of the season, is not an indication of who Conley is as a player. So there is some significant room for him to improve over that time. The next guy, Kelly Oubre, he's been wildly inconsistent. 155th over the last 2 weeks. Only the 29 minutes a game, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 1.6 assists. And this is something that I did stress about Oubre in the offseason and talked about him at the start of the season. His numbers at the end of last season, they were wildly influenced by sky-high steal and block numbers. Over the last 5 games, 0.8 steals and 0.6 blocks. Therefore, he's outside the top 150. He's shooting 46 from the field. It's okay. 72 from the line. Again, that's okay. Room to improve. He's at 27% from 3. Now, why you say, well, that's going to improve? Maybe it doesn't. He was a pretty good 3-point shooter at times last year, but prior to that, he was dreadful. And maybe, just maybe, those numbers last year were the fluke. The small sample of him being a good shooter in Phoenix was the fluke, and the rest is sort of where he is. But I think the defensive numbers can come back up. The usage is at 23. That's probably going to stick. But it's those 29 minutes a game that will likely improve from Oubre. I think he still can get back into that top 100 sort of a mix. Over the course of the year, he is the 94th ranked player. So this is just a little bit of a dip. But it is so much heavily tied to those defensive numbers. And when they fall off and those overall rankings do drop pretty considerably. Next up, we're looking at the Philadelphia 76ers, and I'm looking at Al Horford, the 128th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. He's 68th over the season. He's averaging in these last 6 games 31 minutes, so it's not a minutes problem, but it's 11 points, 6.5 boards, 4 assists. They're good numbers. Horford getting 6.5 rebounds is about normal. 4 assists is great. 1.3 steals, fine. 0.8 blocks, low. But his true shooting percentage is 44%. He's hitting 38% from the field on 12 attempts, a disaster. 50% from the line on 2 attempts, also a disaster. 26% from 3, guess what? A disaster. All those 3 go back up to even close to career numbers, and we're talking back to Horford being a top 50, top 60, at worst, a top 70 player. A real downturn in those shooting numbers that is not something that is going to be sticking as the season goes on.
Percentages.
Yes. Kristaps Porzingis comes in here as a guy I've got as a buy low player. People will be frustrated by looking at that 118th rank over the last 2 weeks. He's averaging 17 and 10, and those 10 rebounds, that's a bit of a surprise for Porzingis. If I could find the drop, I'd play it. Ah, damn it. There it is.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
But, much like Horford, 37% from the field, 32% from 3, only 76% from the line. He should be an 80-plus guy there. He's got 1.7 blocks. That's pretty solid. 1 assist. You're never getting that out of Porzingis. The usage at 26% is fine. So when those percentages come back up, and he's never going to be a 48% field goal guy. We're all well aware of that. But at 43, 44, hitting 40% of his threes, then he is a 20 and 10 guy with almost 2 blocks. And that's a big jump forward from here, who should be looking at, look, he's 76th overall from the season. I think he gets significantly better from there and can be a top 50 guy. We just need those shooting numbers to come back around, which often are an issue when you come back from an ACL injury. Speaking of injuries impacting your shooting numbers, let's talk about another tall white guy, Lauri Markkanen of the Chicago Bulls, the 116th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. 31 minutes a night, that's fine. We want a little bit more, but it's fine. 12 points per game, obviously shitful. 7 rebounds, yeah, look, he could probably do a little bit better there. 0.7 blocks, that's who he is. 1 steal a game, that's actually better than who he is. But 33% from the field, 29% from 3, an abysmal 38% on his 2-pointers. I'm telling you, those numbers won't be that bad. Now, you can be frustrated with him. I get it. I understand it because it's been frustrating. He's passive. I have never been as high on this bloke as other people have been. Straight out. The February numbers he put up last year were great. They were unsustainable. His ceiling is capped, but he also is not this bad. Now, he is dealing with an injury. Injuries impact shooting. He's dealing with an oblique issue. If anyone drops him, he is an auto pickup. But for now, with the frustration that fantasy GMs have with Markkanen, you can get him for nothing. Nothing. Because literally, and I don't know who this was, but there was a comment on him on the Basketball Monster forums saying, he's been terrible. I just don't see how it gets better. Why do we keep saying he's a buy low guy? And I wrote, I'm dead set confident he won't be a 33% shooter from the field. And someone wrote back and said, I just don't see how he improves. And if someone has that mentality, if you're a 33% shooter in the league over a course of the season, you're not in the league. Simple as that. He is not a 33% shooter. Now, maybe he's never going to be a 46 guy, but you go from 33 to 49, that's 9 percentage points. #quick maths.
2 + 2 is 4. -1, that's 3. Quick maths.
It's going to get better. It won't be this bad. And the other thing is, people, look, his usage is low. There's no doubt about that. 19% usage. But you know why his usage is low? Not that Zach LaVine hogs it. Actually, it is because Zach LaVine hogs the shots, but also the shots aren't going in. So if the shots aren't going in, he's less confident to take them. The coach is less confident to run plays for him. There's a really weird, and I wish someone who does more mathematical stuff than I do, or has more ability to pass this data through. There is a thing that when your usage increases, there is a real sweet spot that lower usage often means lower efficiency, because especially when there's a usage drop, it's because your confidence drops, so you're not taking as many shots and the shots aren't going in. And then as your percentages increase, your usage will follow. As you get more confidence, you get more plays run through. But then there's also that sweet spot that when you go over it in terms of usage, because you're just taking so many more shots, your efficiency drops. So there is some sort of sweet spot in the middle there. As market and shot starts to go in, his usage will come up. And then if it goes too far the other way, you'll see the drop back off. But to me, he is a strong buy low who should be able to at least crack the top 70. And he's not there yet. The next guy we talk about, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Gilgeous-Alexander is an interesting one for this season. He has exceeded expectations and also failed to live up to expectations in the same breath. He is the 106th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. He's 98th over the course of the season because outside of his scoring, his numbers have disappeared. He's averaging 1 steal a game, 2.4 assists, 3.5 rebounds over these last 7 games. 89.5 from the line is excellent. Fantastic. Not getting there that often, but excellent. 46 from the field, pretty good. 40% from 3, really, really strong. But everything else is bad. He is just not getting any of those other numbers. Now, will a Chris Paul trade come at some point? I'm actually doubting that Chris Paul is going to get traded this season. I don't think that's going to be a case, and I'm dead certain that Steven Adams is not getting traded as well. So, is Gilgeous-Alexander just going to be stuck in this decently high usage shooting guard role with less playmaking? Yes and no. I do think some of it will improve. I think that we'll get a little bit more of a bump in usage. I think we'll get a little bit more of a bump in steal numbers, which aren't anything to do with usage. So for now, he is a bit of a buy low. If people are frustrated with him, I think he can get better than this. I think he can get back into, he's 90th on the season, he can get back into the top 70, top 60 type discussion. But those lack of peripherals are really hurting him at the moment. And the last bloke on the list is Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets, the 65th ranked player. That's obviously not what you want when you picked him number 6 in the draft. He's a 65th ranked player over the last 2 weeks, 41st over the season. 30 minutes a night, you want that to bump. 17, 7, and 6, it's fine. 1.2 steals, 0.7 blocks. They're okay numbers, but 17 points, that can be 20, 21, no worries. 7 rebounds, that can be 10. 6 assists, that can be 8. There are easy jumps there. 1.2 steals, well, that's fine. That's probably above expectations. 0.7 blocks, it might go to 0.9 blocks, and that might seem like nothing, but it's a big deal. 43% from the field, 67% from the line, 22% from 3. They are your dog's balls. They are the things that are standing out. Now, people are just sagging off him and letting him shoot threes, and he's not hitting them. He had 1 year as a 39% three-point shooter. Don't buy that. He's like a 33, 34 guy. But he should be much better on his twos, much better overall from the free throw line. There are significant indicators of Jokic getting better. You're not going to be able to switch a 60th ranked player for him. That's just not going to happen because we know the draft capital that was invested. But he's going to be better than this. So throw a 3rd rounder, throw a 4th rounder, see what you can get back in exchange for Nikola Jokic, because he is obviously in a bit of a cold streak at the moment. And to start this season, Big Chungus is struggling. All right, that'll do it for my buy low episode. I'll be back tomorrow with a sell high episode, so tune into that. And of course, my usual recap of all of the action from Tuesday, including Carmelo Anthony's Portland debut. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_Beeble, Instagram Locked On Fantasy Basketball, and subscribe. Subscribe to share this podcast. Subscribe once, unsubscribe, go and subscribe again. Boost those metrics over on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, tell your family, steal their phones, steal their computers. Post it everywhere. Tell everybody to subscribe and do the same on YouTube as well. Even if you're not watching on YouTube, go and just subscribe, hit a thumbs up on a video, and help me get this out to more people. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.